Workshop meeting. Workshop meeting is an opportunity for the board and for those present to have a chance to take a look at the items that are on the agenda for the voting meeting next Tuesday. And also gives the board opportunity to discuss in a little bit more detail any items that where there may be questions. Going to also recognize the new piece of furniture in the room. And Dr. Phillips, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. That is a project that our STEM kids at the high school, along with Mr. Terry Laura, has created for us. Trying to get them here next week so we can recognize them kind of the right way. But it's an excellent example of what kind of things we're doing in our classes. I see Mr. Kane, if you could nudge him to come with the kids next week, I'd appreciate that, because they deserve the recognition. It's an excellent piece.
Yes, thank you. And a really great enhancement to our boardroom. Our first item on the agenda will be a building program report by Mrs. Susan Cook, principal of Watton Creek Elementary. Susan, feel free to use the new podium.
Am I the first one?
You are the first. You get to scratch your name into it.
Does it work?
Yes, but unfortunately we don't have the extension now, so you can just take it out. But yes, you get to use the first thing.
I always like the superintendent running after me. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As you can see from my report, we had a wonderful start to the school year, and everything has been going very smoothly. I just gave a little bit of an update on what we're doing in the building with regard to curriculum. Of course, we had Rosemary Belinsky come over and meet the staff on our staff meeting day. And with regards to math, we are looking at the revised pacing guides and the use of Ed City.
We need a picture, come on.
Come on.
It's a new podium, come on.
Okay. With ELA, we're having our first staff instructional professional development session at the end of September, and they're going to be working on handwriting and handwriting skills and setting individual goals for students. One of the things we are doing in the building this year is we're creating a better awareness with the use of maker stations and our fitness center, movement breaks and brain breaks within the classroom, so as to help with discipline and behavior and curb some of those unwanted behaviors in the classroom. So we're working with our OT people and special ed people to make that come about. And actually, we're having a meeting tomorrow morning to start that off. As far as our school partnerships are concerned, last Friday we had a day dedicated to Hurricane Harvey and supporting a community service project. We entitled it Hats Off to Texas. And with that one day, we raised $1,516.06. And we are planning on continuing that project throughout the year to, help raise more money to support those victims. We're working on getting a sister school. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it. We just talked to the superintendent in Texas today and have permission to work with a school down there that has been, needs a lot at this point. We have our grant. Okay, Marcy, this is your cue. Pass around the pictures. Okay, so our fourth grade team asked the Education Foundation for grant money to put additional cameras outside, or trail cams outside in Watton, so that we can show students who lives there. Mr. Diesinger, what does it say on there?
Because you learned on a Watton Creek, but we live here. And it's a caption over a, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.5, it's right around that.
And today we got a picture of a hawk, but we were kind of too late to get that in the photos. And these are displayed downstairs, and all the students in the school are able to see them. We hope to put them on the website and just educate our kids as far as, who lives in our outdoor community there. So thank you to the Education Foundation for that. Our green team is working on a number of things. I mentioned last spring that we're doing trout in the classroom. Sandy Groff received training, our APT paid for that. And we're being sponsored by Trout Unlimited, which is in Tulpahawken. So they're helping pay for all the equipment and whatever we need to have this big fish tank in Sandy Groff's classroom. It's not there yet, but once should be there in a couple of weeks, and then we will receive the fish and grow them, and then we'll be releasing them in the spring, either in the Manatoni Creek or possibly right down the hill. I don't know, that's what they're telling me. So OC Rocks, we're going to be working with the art teacher and our eco kids to create paint rocks, and we're going to use them in the landscaping around the school. I suggested down near the sign, and so we can help keep some weeds down there, and it will enhance the signage down at the along 562. Our youths in the classroom, Amanda and Nina went for training over the summer, and they're actually participating in a session at Kutztown University. They're using our ukuleles to do the session, and we'll get some good publicity out of that, and so there'll be another application out there for other schools to apply for youths in the classroom. So that's kind of cool. Well, the big thing I want to talk about tonight is the Pre-K Counts program. We have a second pre-K classroom this year, and that's going very well. Those children just started on September 5th, and I really like the room a lot. I mean, I like Alicia's room too, don't get me wrong. But I really like this room. It's a little, I guess, I don't know, more subdued or something, but so they're making out very well, and currently they're eating lunch in the cafeteria also. We tried that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Governor's Institute, which is an event that we went to over the summer. I applied for a team of us to go there. I'm going to introduce some of the members that are here. Of course, you know Maggie and Julie, and this is Alicia Bowe. She is our pre-K teacher, and this is Jen Wenzel. She is our BCIU representative. What's your official title?
Assistant Program Administrator at Pre-K Counts.
Okay, did you hear her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have a paper for you to look at to help guide you. We're just going to briefly talk about our mission statement and what our plans are. So, good prompting, Marcy. So, our mission statement is to build connections with community child care centers and offer resources to children who enter kindergarten prepared and help meet their emotional, academic, social, and physical transition needed for success in school. Our guiding principles are listed there. Basically, our goals are to develop a pre-governance and leadership structure. We've entitled our group the Preschool Leadership Connection Council of Exeter. And as I said, those were our team members. We also have a community member, Heather Sabori, who works for the library and also an area preschool. And I think that's it. Becky Bush, the intervention specialist at Jackson Long. So, our plan is to reach out to community members and solicit some support for making sure that all kids have the advantage of going to preschool. And then we also would like to educate stakeholders and the impact that they have on pre-K kids and pre-K initiatives and the impact they have on the community. So some of us have undertaken contacting some community groups, such as, well, you. This is our first presentation, although we have already talked to the folks at the library, and then we'll be reaching out to the Women's Club and some other organizations in the community to build some capacity in growing our programs. We are looking forward to actually hiring someone to be a pre-K coach, and we have applied for a grant to do that, and that's actually through OCDEL, which stands for Office of Child Development and Early Learning. So that's our big chunk of the expenses would be to have someone who would be willing to take the initiative to work between kindergarten and kindergarten teachers and pre-K teachers and kind of coordinate the instruction so that kids are coming to our school prepared for kindergarten. And the pre-K teachers are aligning their instruction to what our needs are. So we're hoping to find maybe a retired kindergarten teacher or someone that would do that. In addition, we're going to provide resources for the students. That would be goal number 3. So resources for students. This might look like having backpacks ready for them, available for every pre-K student who would be coming to kindergarten the following year. In the spring, which is goal number 4, we're going to have a family outreach session. For this year, we're going to enhance upon the Muffins for Moms and hopefully then the summer pre-K program. And we're hoping to tie in the carnival or May Days into a pre-K palooza, or whatever we want to call it, in the spring, in addition to a vendor fair where we would do activities and kids would have kind of a make and take workshop with the area preschool leaders. So I think it's an ambitious undertaking. However, I'm confident that we have a lot of good team members and a lot of good community support to help us do that. We applied for the grant at the end of August. We heard back from them the end of last week, and we added some additional information, and so we're still just waiting now to see when we might get the grant. When, not if, when. So, does anybody want to add anything? Jen, want to say a few words?
Our group would like to make it a future goal to share with other districts the transition plan that we have created to share out information for families transitioning into kindergarten. And we plan to include area events that we participated in, transitioning materials, and suggested ways that we connected to the community leaders. So we'd like this to be a model that used to be out there with the districts. We used to have the transition fair years ago, and unfortunately due to funding that had faded away. So this is just another opportunity to present to districts as I work with area school districts with the Pre-K Counts program to provide them other opportunities that they can do to help children transition into pre-K.
Anyone else? Any questions? Pat?
Yes. How many students graduated from pre-K to kindergarten?
Last year we had 17, and I think maybe we moved
Like
one,
15.
went down a little bit, yeah.
15.
Yeah.
Now, did they all go to Exeter, or they go to other places?
I think
They all went to Exeter.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be in kindergarten. Are we gonna follow them to see how they do as they go up the line because they've had this pre-K experience?
The kiddos at Owatin, I actually get 2 of them are in the classroom right next to me, so I actually get to see them. And I talked to the teachers about how they're doing, and they let me know that they're doing well, so I was able to kind of touch base with them and see how they were doing, and just let them know if there's anything that I can help them with that would aid the students better in their transition.
I think this is fantastic, and I'm so glad that we got a second class, and I'm sure you are too.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to Dr. Phillips for helping us achieve that.
That should be pre-K for everyone. I mean, it would do so, they've had studies on it, how important it is for kids to get in there early and get acclimated to school and, you know, and enjoy school. And I was over at the pre-K school, and I was just amazed at the children. And even, I was there for their lunch break. Well, and I had seen some prior to that too, but the children were talking so nicely to one another and very nice tones. I mean, nobody was screaming in the lunch, you know, during their lunchtime. It was just amazing to see the manners that these young children had and their nice interaction with each other. It was just amazing. So I think you teachers have done a great job.
Yes, I know they work very hard on that, and also, you know, trying to get them acclimated as how to behave in the hallways and other places in the school. And they do have opportunities at times to participate in assemblies for shorter periods of time, and other school events like after-school activities with the APT, if they so choose to do so.
Yeah, it's a great program.
Thank you, Pat. Number one supporter.
Mrs. Cook, I have a question about your grant application and goal number 4. You know, the communicating with the home and school. How do you reach out to the preschool families, and how do you know who's out there? What process do you have for actually identifying you know, families? Is it a select group of families, or are you talking about all families that have preschool kids?
We're talking about all families. So basically, we can start with the pre-Ks that currently exist in you know, in our district, and maybe build some other connections where other folks might want to create pre-K classrooms. Down the line, we're hoping to do maybe scholarships for kids who can't afford to go to pre-K. So, you know, we have a lot of things that we're considering, but these will mostly be funded by community members and organizations in the community.
So the families that you're trying to connect with are disadvantaged families for the most part, low income?
No, it'll be all families will be like invited to attend our events, but
How do you reach out? That's what I'm curious about. We don't have a database.
we
of these,
do. We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the kids that should be registering for kindergarten the next year. So we have that information. The only ones we wouldn't have would be move-ins, basically, or people that haven't been here for a long period of
Susan,
time.
let me just address that just a moment. Just so the board is aware, in the past, as Jen shared, the transition fair took place for quite a number of years at the IU. And it was something that we always attended in the evening. A kindergarten teacher went with me, and that was a chance for us to reach out to our partnerships in the community UCC, your local pre-K programs. So as Susan is saying, what I've done in the past couple of years is I've sent a letter out every year inviting those pre-K folks in so that we can have a partnership established. What we're hoping through this group is that we can have a more formalized way of meeting with the pre-K providers would be the conduit for us in reaching their parents, because we have a huge list. We do have an established list from letters I've sent just even last year to our pre-K providers. The IU also has them. So this is not just our pre-K counts. This is all of our local area pre-K providers that their kids come into this program. We can outreach through the pre-K providers to their families, inviting them to things, plus build the partnership so that our pre-K providers, even with the pre-K counts programs, they don't necessarily have the same curriculum that we do. And so these are our Exeter kids that are coming into our program, and we want to be able to build and coordinate the materials and resources and the outreach of the parents so that it's within the greater community that our kids are coming better and better prepared. We see a huge difference in Exeter School District when we do our screening in the spring of the year with our kids who have had no pre-K, and then even with some of our kids who have had pre-K, depending upon which pre-K they've gone to. and their preparedness for school. So we do, in answer to your question, Dr. Hemberger, we do have a list, but even greater list coming from the IU because of partnering with them.
So with your baseline data, how many children in Exeter at the preschool level don't enroll in preschool? I mean, how many more children need to be served?
I can't tell you, I don't have any statistic off of the top of my head, but we gather data on all of our incoming K kids, and we have a good number of children, I would say, in each of our classrooms, maybe 3 to 5 students that have probably had no pre-K experience and are not coming with most of the basic skills that our incoming K kids have. And that's part of the reason why they have worked so hard to establish a relationship with BCIU for the pre-K counts, because the pre-K counts in our school district, the 2 classrooms, is really outreaching to those the neediest families in our school district.
17 in one class, and the other class has
Yeah.
17 as well. Okay, so 34 kids.
And those are predominantly lower income students. But our outreach, we want it to be with all kids. You know,
Yes, you have 1 lead teacher and then 1 para.
And right now, it's not at capacity. We, because we just opened the second classroom, and so we would need to gather some more children to participate, because it was only approved like mid-August, when you say, Dr. Phillips. So I'm amazed that we got it open that quickly, right, Jen?
Yes, very quickly.
And it was like within a week or so, I was like getting an email, okay, can we bring our equipment in on, Friday?
And because of our participating in the Governor's Institute, the Pre-K 3 Institute, that's what allowed us to apply for the grant. Because we're a new school district in this, we were allowed to apply for a grant of $10,000. And that is what we've applied for thus far. We just heard back from them last week, so we're really, really hopeful. We gave them some additional information, so we're hopeful that that will be approved, so that we can move forward with our plans.
And that's over and above the grant that we got to establish the second class.
Oh yeah, they're totally separate. Yes, totally
So
separate.
that'll buy more materials, more.
Yes.
Susan, you talked about the availability of scholarships. Are there any you sort of put that in the future. I was wondering, are there any scholarships now?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, the only thing right now that is out there is Child Information Services, which is hosted by the BCIU, where parents can get funding to quality preschool programs. The BCIU also hosts a grant for United Way funding, which again allows families who do not have the funding to get to a pre-K program. Generally, some private child care centers do offer scholarships. Area businesses, I know DECA, Carpenter, and a few of those will often do tax write-offs to be able to provide funding for pre-K students in area schools.
And that's one of the steps that we're looking to take, is get local businesses stepping up and providing those scholarships so we can have more students involved.
Oh, I myself am looking forward to a beverage tax.
God, I'll have to pay a lot for that.
And actually, we do this at my church. I'm the director of our preschool at church, and we do offer scholarships to needy kids. And they have to fill out a form and all that kind of stuff and be approved, but someone within the church may sponsor them, either on a monthly basis or a yearly basis.
I'm trying to figure out where the 3-year-olds fit into this.
Well, the institute was pre-K to 3rd grade. So we're choosing to focus on, the kids coming into kindergarten. However, down the line, we want to make connections for even younger students. So this is the first year. We want to build our capacity with local doctors and health facilities, lots of things that we can do in the future. So we're starting with a grand plan, but down the line we may be able to expand it to other things.
We wouldn't focus on the 3-year-olds. That's the IU has a 3-year-old program. The pre-K programs are dealing with 3-year-olds. We're primarily dealing with pre-K kids at that 4 or 5 year age.
Okay.
Program runs for the pre-K counts program. We always take 4-year-olds first because we want them every child to at least have 1 year of programming before they go to kindergarten. But as right now, because we do have openings, we have started taking 3-year-olds as well. Each child is allowed to be in the program for 2 years, so we always try to make sure too that they fall in line so that they're not missing a gap. Depending on their birthdays, we go by the school district's kindergarten registration date so that we don't have a child starting too early and then they miss that year because they put 2 years into the program, then they miss that year before kindergarten. But there are times that we do take 3-year-olds into the program.
By taking them into the program, where exactly do those 3-year-olds go?
Into the classroom, the pre-K counts classrooms.
At a Y.
Yeah.
Just have to, it's hard for me to just imagine, but it's pretty wonderful. Thank you.
Talking about data, we collect data on like our current students, their siblings. We collect that kind of data, do we not?
Like literally.
Like so I'm a first grader, but I have a younger brother and sister.
Oh, absolutely.
We would
Yeah.
know that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So
absolutely.
I assume that provides us a lot of data.
I want to say thank you. You're doing a phenomenal job. I love hearing all these great ideas. Can you tell me in regards to hats off to Texas? You said they earned they raised a little bit over $1,500. How did they do that? What did they do?
They dressed in hats, patriotic hats, or wore patriotic colors, or cowboy hats, cowboy boots, teams from Texas, like Dallas, Houston. What are they, Texans? Yes. Anything they wanted to wear, and they donated money to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cook. And thank you, the CIU team, for coming here this evening and sharing your involvement in this very important program. Our next section of the agenda will feature Mrs. Ann Geidish, our business manager, and we'll be reviewing the 2016-17 revenue, expense, and fund balance. Mrs. Geidish.
Let me just grab this. This isn't wired yet, so I can't work from here.
Green's on, green light's on, you're ready to go.
All right. Last Friday, we finished the fieldwork portion of our audit for the year ending June 30th, 2017. So I wanted to take this opportunity to review the final numbers for revenue, expense, and fund balance, and also discuss the opportunity for the board to transfer more than what to capital reserve than what we had discussed back in June. Back in June, we had discussed, as part of the estimate and budget process, the transfer of $900,000 into the capital reserve fund, because our estimate for general fund indicated that we would have an excess of revenue over expense. And this expense number included that $900,000 transfer. So what has happened with the closing of the books and the adjusting journal entries is that, and in Board Docs there is an explanation, a Word document, which summarizes the changes in revenue, expense, from the estimate that was made last May. Would be the last time that I would have changed those figures. Revenue overall, the local sources of revenue, from estimate to what we actually booked, is $500,000, or about 0.7% greater. And a lot of that has to do with the earned income business privilege tax and delinquent taxes for June, which come in July, and we do an adjusting journal entry, so they were about 300,000 more than we had estimated. Basically, we look at our estimates for months we don't know about, we look at the prior year. Well, the last month of June was, collections in those three areas were significant, and that accounts for a good portion of that increase. Our investment income is also about 60-some thousand higher than we estimated. Our investment rates are going up, which is good news. Another source, local sources of revenue. We received some additional rentals, contributions, and receipts from other LEAs. That's where some students that have a student attending here, we receive tuition. And there are athletic receipts are up as well. So overall, 502,000 more in revenue. So that's 72.3 million in revenue is 500,000 what we looked at back in late May and early June. Expenses, the experience was better, and it's really due in large part to wage and benefits, which were about 740,000 or about 1.5% less than the estimate. And that really has to do with the impact of turnover, vacancy, leaves, and changes to contract benefits. I mean, we do our best to get an estimate in May of what the contract balances will be, but the method that we used, using employee management assignments, doesn't consider the full impact of turnovers and vacancy. So there, it's about 740-some thousand. And again, part of that is our X-Flex benefit. We have phased it out for a couple of the agreements and contract. So we made a year-end adjustment to lower that liability, as well as tuition reimbursement. Based difference, the contract language changes, there is a significant reduction there as well. The other area, which was lower than estimated, was in charter school and private placement tuition costs. We receive our final reconciliations for tuition in July and August. And charter school was 100,000 less than our estimate, and our private placements was about 220,000. So all of those amounts I summarize in board docs, and I did place this in your folders, is about 1.2 million. So what does that really do to our fund balance? This includes the 900,000 we discussed that was part of the budget process and is on the agenda, the workshop agenda, to be approved for transfer, because we do this post-audit, because we want to make sure we've covered everything. But we still have an excess of revenue over expense of 1.9 million. So this is an opportunity to look at transferring more, possibly 850,000, whereas it brings the excess to $1 million. It adds to fund balance, but it's also a conservative way of making sure that you're taking care of maybe some unforeseen events. And more importantly, transferring to the Capital Reserve Fund, which is Fund 32. We've been talking a lot about our capital planning and the projects out through 2022, 23, and these are estimates, could be $11.7 million. And looking what we have, general fund commitments towards capital, Fund 32 Capital Reserve, this 5.7 million includes the 900,000. Fund 37, 39, these are they are capital project funds. So just based upon how we are phasing different projects, and this is in the red is how we'll use the funds, and if the board and I, we work together to decide, well, how much should we keep in reserve and capital funds? You really shouldn't deplete all of your funds, keeping a $3 million base there. There will be a time, 1920, when we'll have to possibly borrow. So moving more money to capital reserve really makes more funds available for the maintenance projects. And it lowers the amount that may be needed to bond or borrow in the future, and to avoid some additional interest costs. So moving 1.5 million or 1.75 million versus the 900,000, we'll still have an unassigned fund balance of 12% to 12.4. And that will cover our unexpected revenue shortfalls. We have more assessment appeals. Exeter Common has appealed our assessment. What if we don't get the state funding, the 200,000 which we have in the budget? So the unassigned fund balance that we have could absorb if those things happen. But also, taking the action to transfer money to capital reserve, but also maintaining a healthy unassigned fund balance helps your credit rating. When I sat through the rating review with Standard & Poor's back at the end of July, they kept asking me, is the board, is it the common practice to transfer funds to capital reserve when there are excesses so that you can support your maintenance projects? So that is a very important thing in their eyes, and they're also very concerned about districts being able to pay their debt and having a good fund balance. So the unassigned fund balance, it is a healthy balance, but it is very important in a large school district as ours is. And also, I just want to point out the Auditor General has emphasized there are reasons to hold or reserve money for capital projects. Not to mention, pension obligation, but that an unassigned fund balance under 10% or falling is a cause for concern. So we are in a good position. There is an opportunity here to transfer more than the 900,000. On the workshop agenda, I do have the 900,000, but I think it's the time where we should transfer, 1.75 million. I prefer to be more conservative, 1.5 million, but and again, when the funds are in capital reserve, they can be used for capital projects, the purchase of vehicles, as well as any technology purchases. So there is that flexibility.
Your recommendation is the 1.75?
Yes. Any questions?
Yeah. Okay. I'm just thinking of a different path for this. For this year's budget, the 17-18 budget, what is the projected deficit?
The projected deficit for the 17 is 900,000.
So I guess I'm wondering why we wouldn't use the extra funding left over from last year to reduce the deficit for this year, and perhaps lower the in the future, lower the increase in taxes. I mean, we've been increasing taxes based on projections, and if we're doing better than expected, maybe we should look at the tax rate rather than shifting the money to another fund.
Well, the excess fund balance will go to fund balance, and obviously that will impact how much you can raise taxes, because how you design your budget, you're going to assign for your budget that you adopt can't be more than that 8%. This additional is not really going to reduce the deficit for the current year. All it's really doing is going to your fund balance. What will reduce the deficit for next year might be if we get more money from the state, but I'm not sure that's not going to happen. I mean, if we don't get the 200,000 from the state for subsidy increases, our deficit will be 1.1 million. So, I understand what you're saying. Keeping it in the unassigned fund balance kind of limits, your tax increases. But remember, it is a tough balancing act for school boards. There are so many financial challenges, and also what's the appropriate fund balance to have. But I just keep going back to the fact that, we now know these are maintenance projects. There's nothing new going on here, that we have to pay for this. And if we're able to transfer a little more just to save, to pay with cash and save on interest costs, I think that's a much better way to approach it. But still maintaining a significant fund balance, of unassigned 8.6 million. We have a lot of assignments, 7 million, and change that number. Oh no, that's 16 of 2.9. This number does go down to 2.2 at the end of this year because we're using money for capital reserve. So it's really just a way of funding capital reserve. I mean, the other alternative is to increase your commitments, go back and increase the capital portion of it.
Hey, did you go to the previous one?
This one?
No. I saw a number there. I'm just confused. I wonder if you could help me out. It talks about a fund balance of 12 to, where was it? Yeah, 12 to 12.4.
Right, which is, if 1.75 is transferred, it's a 12% unassigned fund balance.
When we
So
talk about the cap of 8% of your budget,
that's budget, that's not actual.
okay, all right, that's
So
the
when
difference
we-
in these numbers. Thank you.
Right, when we actually adopted the budget, the 17-18 budget, the unassigned is 8%. The estimate for 16-17 was higher than 8%, but it's the estimate, it's the actual, it's just how it ends up by the end of the year.
Okay, all right, so it may be, like you're saying, putting more money in capital reserve or something like that, that would maintain the 8%.
I'm not going to that point,
Okay.
right? It's still at 12%, and that's the actual, and that's allowed.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
prepared,
it's really
that was my confusion.
the budget that you adopt.
Okay,
Okay, which is why we were at 1.25% of a millage increase, because of the level of unassigned fund balance that we had. And to Dr. Bender's point, keeping it in unassigned fund balance and not committing more or not making more assignments, then you really are going to limit what your tax increase can be under Act 1. But I think it's very important to understand that these numbers are real, and that this has to be funded, and you have to take action. I mean, the 900,000 was on the agenda. This is an opportunity to transfer more, and it's really up to the school board. It's a difficult balancing act. There's a lot of different parts and a lot of.
I mean, if I've learned anything, it is very complicated, but, the timing of this is always frustrating, because if any of us would have known this in May, we would have not voted for a tax increase. And it's my third or fourth budget on the board, and it seems that every year we do such a great job of managing the budget that we are always under the budget. So it is, to your point, it is a challenge. We do have a fiduciary responsibility to the school district. We also have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer. And we found $1.9 million. And whose money is that?
Taxpayers.
Well, I thank you, Matt, for that, your explanation, because I do agree with you. So, that's it, I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Mrs. Scottish. Our next section of the agenda will open up the floor for any public comments. Anything related to items on the agenda, or anything else that would be in the best interest or for the good of the school district. Seeing none, our next section of the agenda will be, next Tuesday, we'll be looking at the approving the board special voting minutes of August 8th. We'll be approving the board workshop minutes of August 8th and the board voting minutes of August 15th. The next section is board policy, and we have several that we'll be looking at next week for second reading, which will be the final vote on approving the policy, and then several for first reading. I know we have had some comments since our last meeting on some of these, and the first one is field trips. I know, Dr. Bender, you had a comment. Did you want to just briefly review that for the benefit of the board members?
I see this as a editorial change. Toward the end of the policy, just above the administration of medication, there's a statement that says, in order for any student to participate in any school-sponsored trip, all financial obligations for the trip and all disciplines must be met prior to departure. And I would ask the administration to just revise that phrase, and all disciplines, to make it clear. It's probably all discipline obligations.
Just put obligations, yes, that will be done.
That's likely, yes.
Thank you.
Good pickup on that. The next policy is extracurricular activities. Dr. Bender, I think you also had a comment on that as well.
Yes, this is a follow-up to the phrase, the previous policy said the board would not charge for extracurricular participation, and the latest version of the policy says the board in its discretion may establish and charge an extracurricular fee in an amount to be determined. And again, an editorial recommendation I would make is that the words "in its discretion" be stricken. It sounds like an attorney wrote this, but I think the policy could read, the board may establish and charge an extracurricular fee.
That will be done.
With no discretion involved.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Bender. Any other comments about this? The next policy that we'll be looking at for second reading will be Code of Conduct, extracurricular activities, interscholastic activities. That's 122.1.
Yeah.
And this was actually just a policy that wasn't necessarily changed, but it was renumbered to better correspond with policy alignment. So there's really no major change in that, unless there's any additional suggestion for change. Now would be the time. The next is 123, interscholastic activities. This was an updated policy in accordance with current state and federal laws and regulations. And 123.1 and 123.2, both are brand new policies that relate to protocol for concussion management and sudden cardiac arrest. So these are brand new policies for PSBA that we'll be adding to our board policy manual. The rest of the policies will be up for first reading. And just to kind of walk through those briefly, Policy 124, Alternative Instruction, says a revised title. We've added some language relevant to other types of alternative instruction, such as correspondence or online courses, dual enrollment. So we're anticipating our administrative team would review that, make sure we're comfortable with the language there. Dave.
Yeah, this may be more content. One of the new guidelines says the course subject must be included in the district's planned instruction and be relevant to established academic standards. And I think that contradicts the first paragraph on the policy for dual enrollment. So I mean, the idea of dual enrollment is that students may extend their enrollment in courses beyond what's offered at the high school.
No, actually, the dual enrollment courses are courses offered at the high school that duplicate a college course at RAC.
At RAC, yeah. But dual enrollment also refers to students who may attend a course at a college.
Well, I don't know if that's the intent of the policy. I just know what the dual enrollment courses are at the high school and in the Soaring Eagle.
But you do have students taking college courses. Yes.
We do occasionally, but that is treated as a separate transcript, a college transcript. It does not go on their high school transcript.
I mean, I think of that as alternative instruction.
Yeah, I would think this deals expressly with what Mr. Kane is talking about for
Okay.
the duplication courses. That would be outside this policy.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
So that's what dual enrollment means, that RAC.
At RAC, it means duplicate. Dual enrollment for colleges like Dr. Betterstein College are over and above.
Is outside of this policy.
Yes.
So are we,
We will need
So
to
it would
create
be that.
we will need to create a policy when we start to offer those college courses.
The next policy is 125, adult education, just some minor changes there. Nothing significant. Anybody pick up anything that they would like to talk about on that policy? Policy 126, it's class size. And this is one of these policies that I think, again, our administrative team really likes to make sure that there are both, that the language within the policy is consistent with whatever administrative regulations we may have developed. But from what I can tell, it seemed to be consistent. It's a general policy, but it certainly doesn't provide the level of detail that you may need for establishing class size. So I would assume that there are some regulations that apply to that.
I have a question about 125. Do we do adult education now here in the district? Opportunities for adults education?
I don't believe we offer any adult education courses at this time, but that policy is one recommended by the ESBA in case we decided to go that route.
But we don't do anything right now. Okay. Do you think we would be doing something in the future?
Never say never.
so does having this policy suggest that we're going to be doing something imminently, or?
No, it just gives us a policy to reflect on if we decide to go that route. Or a guideline, if you will, if we decide to go that route.
Okay. So if I come to you tomorrow and say I need an adult education course, I can do it.
Well, at this point, we don't offer it, but we have a policy to cover that in case we decide to do that.
First reading.
First reading as well, yes.
It's gonna take at least a month.
No, I just.
Yeah, we've had a policy in place for a long time. It's
2003,
Just
apparently.
just minor suggested changes to it. 127 is the assessment system where they've added some PSBA recommended language on providing assessment information to the Department of Education. Also added updated language on dissemination of student assessment scores and information. Policy 130, homework is a new policy. So that would be important, I think, for all of our administrators especially to take a really careful look at that.
I'd like to make a comment about the homework policy.
Yes, please.
The purpose, it says provide practice and reinforcement of skills presented by the teacher. And then two more items that refer to interaction with parents. I mean, I'd like the administration to look at a broader definition of homework, because it could include reading time, creative projects, exploration.
I would think that the broadest policy is just that. It doesn't get into what you just mentioned. It actually encompasses anything that would be considered homework.
Yes.
It could be reading, yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So you want to specify certain areas in that policy?
Well, no, I like to see it broadened.
Well, I guess the purpose of
Take a look
reading
at the
would be
purpose.
to what? I mean, I would assume it's to reinforce the skills or, I think
Well, it could be to develop a habit of enjoying reading, recreational reading.
But I think the purpose is, and I know Dr. Himmer has said this many times, the purpose of the policy is to be so broad that we don't get into the specifics.
Well, no, I'm saying I think the purpose as it is now is too limited.
It's too limited. Okay,
Yeah.
so you'd like to see it
So
more
I'm just
broad.
asking you to
Would
take a
you,
look at it.
would you mind just put that in thought in writing?
Yeah, and we can
So we have a clear
Yeah.
idea, and maybe send it to Dr. Phillips,
Yeah.
and disseminate it to the administrative team,
Yeah.
and take a look.
Right.
So the second statement under guidelines doesn't cover your concern that the complement of classroom instruction beforehand.
No, I'd like to see the first purpose broadened.
Okay, but, all right, I just thought that this would complement.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, that it's tonight a good opportunity when you talk about the purpose of homework to really kind of look at it from more of a philosophical point of view. Why do we assign homework? And I think it's point well taken. I think it's worth a little discussion and debate in terms of why we actually do it.
So are you going to put some recommendation in writing?
Yeah, and I'll forward it to you.
Thanks.
Next policy is 131, religious holiday, cultural activities observance. And this is a policy that it's we need to look at, I think, pretty carefully, just to make sure that some of the things that are in this policy are still consistent with what we actually practice here in the school. So I would hope that our solicitor would look at this very carefully, as well as our, again, our administrative team, to make sure that
He reviews each one.
yeah, he does. Yep. So that's the extent of the first reading policies that will be on the agenda for next Tuesday, and would invite again the board members, administrative team to kind of provide suggestions if you see something that appears in need of modification. Our next section is business functions. Dr. Heron.
Item 7A, it will be recommended that the board authorize district administration to contract for bus transportation on an as-needed basis for athletic, other curricular, extracurricular, and field trips. Item 7B, it will be recommended that the board approves a fund transfer of $900,000 from the general fund to the capital reserve.
Are we going to change that?
Your recommendation would be amended to 1.75?
Well, I'd like to, before we go to that, make that move. Is there support for it?
Well, this is not a voting meeting, so I don't know if we can. But that would be the motion in the
And
discussion.
then amend it next week?
I would think that would be
I
appropriate.
would think that's, if that's what
Make that your motion.
ultimately, if that's what you want to do, I think that's what you want to bring forward.
I anticipate, or I've received information indicating that there'll be a cut to the funding that we're going to get next year, to be announced very soon. Would it matter whether we have it in the capital reserve or just sitting as an excess from this year?
I mean, if you want to hedge yourself, you could reduce it
I will
1.5
supposedly have an idea before the next meeting.
You can always amend it before the next, when we get to the next meeting.
We're gonna leave it this way and amend it next time, or amend it, or change the
You want
number
your
this time.
1.75 now, and we can amend it, right?
Yes.
So it'd be 1.75 and then amend it if needed.
7C, it would be recommended that the board authorize district administration to accept a proposal from Conrad Siegel for a third-year consulting services. Item 7D.
Can I ask a question about that? Mr. Scotty, is this common practice now across the school board, school district, this service?
It is. I surveyed all business managers in our county, and I got 6 responses, and 5 of the 6 are still continuing with Conrad Siegel. From my perspective, it's a terrible unfunded mandate, and the amount of hours and the expertise needed to do it is really beyond what I want to dedicate the people that I ever see doing anymore, because I really need them in other areas, and I need to start having them focus more on budgeting, accounting, and not being pulled away for such detail. I mean, it's a federal mandate, but it's very time consuming, and we spend enough time doing it, and it really is a dual effort with the Human Resource Department. And maybe Marcy, you can add something.
Yeah, I would agree. Just as Ian was saying, it's a fairly intricate process, even with the consulting firm. We go back and forth.
It really has to do with manpower hours and dedicating the staff to this when it's money well spent for this. And so third year doing it.
Right, and hopefully it's that way.
God bless you.
At some point.
Thank you.
The reporting part of it. I'm not getting
I
political,
appreciate
but-
it. Thank you for your explanation. I really appreciate it.
Item 7D, it would be recommended that the board approve the property tax refund in the amount of $5,604.16. And that's it.
Dave, I'm sorry, I just stepped out of the room. I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the bus transportation. And maybe you've answered these. Who's actually going to administer that process?
As far as the athletic trips when it's necessary, the secretary coordinates. They communicate with our transportation department, all of their trips, and all the changes they make. And if we can't do it because it occurs after the trip is scheduled, before our drivers get back in from their regular routes, then that's candidate for contacting the contractor and the secretary of the athletic department. To my understanding, does most of that contact. And Tom maybe involved too. Last year was about 35 trips. To put it in perspective, the district athletic trips are about 335 per year. So 35, a cost of $15,000 per year compared to what we spend of $82,000 for athletic trips.
Who's going to manage the extracurricular and field trip buses? Who's going to administer
the school, the advisor would make the contacts for an extracurricular, like an environmental trip or field trip. The building secretary generally handles it. Initially, we thought, well, that's the business office, we can help out, but we got to be the middle person, dealing with different people. So it's the teacher, the secretary. I think it's, there are many field trips. It really impacts mainly the athletic.
My understanding is that we will provide the trips, and if we can't, then we will notify the staff that they would have to.
As long as they have time, I recall having attempted to go to a college fair in Philadelphia with my daughter, and the bus never showed. So there were approximately 50 parents and kids, and parents had taken off work to take their children, and there was no means of transportation. And that ended up stemming from the fact that the teacher or the guidance counselor who was coordinating the trip didn't know how the process worked. So I just would want to make sure that people are aware that if they have a responsibility for that they know how the process works, because parents were pretty angry. The last question I had related to the buses was, are we taking first available? Are we basing it on cost? What are the criteria for the selection if we're going to be providing a bus?
Well, I've shared with administrators that the BCIU rates are the most affordable, but their situation is very similar to ours because of all the regular routes that they do. Then Klein and Rhodes are the other alternatives. And Rhodes is more affordable, but if they're not available, then Klein.
So we'd be on cost then?
Basically on cost, but we work well with all three.
Well, I heard you say two things. It's both on cost, but it's also on availability.
Sure.
So it's
BCIU is available.
That's my recommendation.
So, you know, my concern with having three services, again, is with a teacher or somebody in administration. Somebody who doesn't do this on a regular basis could be making a lot of phone calls. And, you know, that's when things have a tendency to not work. So I just would, somehow if there's something you guys can make available to everybody that is just a very simple sheet that lists the service, lists the phone numbers, just to make it easier for them, especially for us.
I provided all the contact information to them. The most challenging has been the athletics, and I can't speak to why that bus didn't show up for that trip.
It's amazing the things that stick with you.
Pardon?
It's amazing the things that stick with you. The bus shows up 999 out of 1,000 times, and I remember the one time it didn't. So, and that's not meant to be disparaging, but I mean, I was okay. I could get in the car and drive to Philadelphia. I didn't take off work that day, but other people did, and it just upset them. And I do think, all in all, that things work pretty well. I don't think the athletic department will have an issue with it because they're used to being on buses a lot. I think it's the onesies and the twosies that don't deal with it often, and that don't, you know, maybe know how it works. So.
Well, and I see Dr. Miller in the audience. What we've done is we've asked the buildings to be very far in advance with their field trips for nursing and other reasons. So it should be more than enough time. If you know you're going to be going somewhere in May, now you can start your process.
Thank you.
Can I just mention one more thing about busing that I haven't heard you mention because it's so evident in my office is our homeless population and trying to get, as I might mention it, because I know you've been working with Kathy a lot just this past week, our homeless population and trying to get the busing set up. We've had a family waiting almost all week because the biggest issue is Klein and all of our extra providers that we can go to, they don't have drivers either. We just had a call back from somebody, we have a van, but we don't have any drivers. So it really is becoming more and more of a pervasive issue that even our contractors that we go to, they have the vehicle sitting there and they don't have drivers. And so it's just the whole transportation piece is getting complex, and homeless has been something that really, we've had families waiting. We try to get a 2-day turnover for a homeless family between the districts. In Berks County, between the districts, we can pretty much get a 2-day turnover with a notice, but when it's out of the county or a little farther, this family was in Montgomery County, it's been really getting tricky trying to get transportation, and it's because our contractors don't have drivers as well. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. That's another transportation piece that is adding to some things.
Dr. Miller, isn't it the shared responsibility between the two districts?
Yes.
Do we ever ask the other district in the event that we can't provide transportation to provide in
yes.
lieu of ours, and maybe we would pay them for the...
Yeah, it's always half and half. We have to do both, but we don't have the transportation a lot, so we're sometimes calling Klein, and then we'll send them half the bill, or you know, whichever. Or like the student we have at O&J right now, we don't have the transportation to do it. So our side, we were trying to get a contractor, which we've been trying all week to get an answer, and then O&J was going to bus the child back, but they could get the child back only after first period was nearly done, and our homeless coordinator in Berks County said that's not acceptable. So then we had to go back and see if we can find another busing company and then send O&J the bill. So it's really getting, the busing issues are really getting much more complicated for homeless as well.
Okay, our next section on the agenda is personnel, and Dr. Bender.
Part A are number of resignations of certificated staff, certificated substitutes, support staff, support substitutes, and extracurricular staff. Part B, we have an retirement of a support staff member. Part C are appointments of administrative staff, certificated staff, support staff, food service staff, certificated substitutes, guest teachers, support substitutes, extracurricular staff, and school health services. Part D, we have a leave of absence.
Excuse me,
Oh, yes.
Are we still on administrative staff?
Yes,
So what was the salary that Mrs. Dahl was being paid, and what is the difference between that and the salary listed here?
What was, what was
Okay. So about a $6,000 difference. Thank you.
Part D, a leave of absence of support staff. Part E, a change of status of support staff and food service staff. Part F is a report of course requests. And Part G are staff conferences. That would be it for personnel.
I'd like to ask Marcy a question concerning the bus drivers. Do we have less bus drivers than we had last year, or do we have more?
I would say we probably have fewer this year.
I'm sorry?
I would say we probably have fewer this year.
Fewer this year.
We have 3 retirements.
Yeah.
And we have 2 in training, one waiting to finish training, one waiting for physical to be approved. So, we are in the same position we were last year.
So that they'll be full-time, the 2 that are...
They'll drive a regular route. Our routes are 5 hours, 5 and 4, 5.5. They are part-time. They don't work try not to work more than 30 hours per week. Technically, they're part-time, but it's for full routes.
Well, since we have so many problems with like extracurricular activities, how come we don't let people drive a little, a little bit more time?
Well, it's those athletic events that leave before our drivers sign up for trips, but it's the trips that leave after they're done their regular route at like 4:30. But if a trip's leaving at 2 o'clock, we don't have enough subs to fill those types of trips. Or if a field trip is leaving before 9 a.m. in the morning, our drivers really aren't back. I mean, they're just 8:45, 9, they're dropping off at the elementary, Cape Forks. So field trips going before then, we don't have an extra driver or 2 to fill that need.
Okay, Marcy, that's what we have to work on. Do you still have on the website about bus drivers?
Papers with ad in the paper, we do different things, but.
And it is a nationwide problem.
There are advertisements everywhere.
If I could put my 2 cents in the IU, it is a continual problem there. We pay a bonus to people who will drive. We have licensed people in the administrative sections that go down and fill in on routes when necessary. So it takes the secretarial personnel out of the office itself to drive buses. So it's a nationwide program. And if I could ask, what is the cost of a single person for medical care for our programs? The
For a
premium.
single premium, about $7,000 a year district cost.
Okay, so you allow that driver that we're running 29 hours or 30 hours a month to go 31 hours. Under the law, now we have to spend an extra $7,000 to get him the insurance. That's why it is not, that's why we don't allow them to go more than the 30 hours. It's you get up in the morning at 5:30, you drive a bus for 2 hours, or 6:30, you drive a bus for 2 or 3 hours, you go home for 3 or 4 or 6 hours, then you come back and start driving a bus again. So they're getting 30 hours a week split up so that it takes up their entire day. It's not a very desirable job, plus they got 40 screaming kids in the back throwing things at their head. So that's why it is a nationwide problem, not just a problem here. And if you can imagine paying our 50 drivers all $7,000 more a year to cover their insurance, that's what it would cost.
We could put a health suite in the bus barn.
Dave, I have one more question. It seems to me that some of the recent hires that we've made have required an escalation in salary. And I'm wondering, we deal with this a lot at the hospital, is, you know, as you escalate the salary of new hires, what is your compensation strategy to retain staff that you already have? And, you know, what is our approach to dealing with this and being able to retain talent?
Well, and again, what we've experienced is it really hasn't been any consistency. So we've now made it consistent to bring in people, the best staff that we can get. That was the thing I've heard. And they're coming in at the salaries that we're offering them. They're getting that other places. So if we're going to hire the best, we've got to give them that staffing. Now, what we put in place are the increases. We put in different incentives for the staff that is already here for the contract to try and keep our current people. But unfortunately, when they were brought in, they were not brought in under the same consistency that we have now in place.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bender. Next section is student functions, and that's Mrs. Krischer.
Item A, just reviewing the field trips within the 60-mile radius. And while we're here, I've been thinking that perhaps this year might be a good year to review all of our field trips in terms of our policy, in terms of the policy that was just put in place. But that's just an editorial comment. Item B is a request for a dissertation, and I assume that's, you know about that.
Yes.
And you can explain it next week. Item C, opportunities for the Opportunity School Agreement. Pretty standard, straightforward for one student. Item D, it's an agreement with River Rock Academy, and this is a placeholder. And item E, the contract with the, well, I'm catching up with this here, with River Rock. That's past that.
I have a question about
River Rock, yeah.
Why does we have a placeholder for, is it 5 students at the secondary level and the 3 elementary slots? Because that means we have to pay for them whether or not they're there or not, right?
You can answer that, but number one, those places fill up very quickly, and if we don't have slots purchased, you will not get those kids in, number one. Number two, we already have students.
You already have students there.
That are there.
There is an error in the board motion. Where you'll see it says 3, and in parentheses it says 1. The contract is actually for 1. You'll see it says 5 written, and then it says 5 in parentheses for the secondary, and then it says 3 in parentheses 1 for the elementary. It should be 1. So there's 1 elementary slot, and there's 5 secondary slots. We have one.
I
Yeah, at the
think you should
elementary.
point out, those are a reduction from last year. 'cause you
Those
had
are all,
7
yes, we
increase, and now we're down
have,
to
we have
5.
taken a significant reduction. We've kind of stopped buying slots. We were buying a lot more, but we've had a real strong initiative with Mrs. Dahl and our department to bring kids back. So we have really, I think we had 10 slots last year when we opened the school year, and so we've significantly reduced slots. And I believe we have one elementary there now. We already have that elementary slot filled, and I believe we have a handful. We may only have one slot left of the 5. We have a handful of students already there. But as Dr. Phillips said, the conundrum we run into, and we'll face this in the spring, is when we have somebody do something and they are removed from the school district for some reason, and we have to find a placement for them. And River Rock is like, we're full, everybody's full. But we decided as a district not to do that any longer, and we'll just play those cards out as they come along. So we really have stopped the paying for a lot of slots any longer as a district. We're not doing that anymore. So most of those slots are already filled, but kids do come and go. So there might be somebody that comes back, end of the first marking period, and we still have that slot paid for, and we could put something else, another student in.
So, are there any students that were there last year that automatically went in again in September?
Yes. A lot of times it's an IEP team decision that that's the best spot for the child to continue to make progress.
All right, thank you.
Are we good on that?
I think you have maybe another item?
Yep, I do.
Yeah.
Item F, approve the annual tuition payment in the amount of $12,022 for a student to receive instruction in agricultural program at Owen. And that's it.
Is he going to always full-time?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
We've had this in the
That
past.
explains it. Yes, I know, that explains it.
He is an only student who moved here.
Right.
But wants to continue the ag
Yes,
program.
yes, I remember the letter from the guy with the Parkinson's.
So he's in 9th grade this
Yeah.
year?
Yes.
So we'll continue to. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Kutcher. Facilities Committee, Mr. Brady's not here. Is there another member of the Facilities Committee who would like to discuss these? First is on our Facilities Committee. Okay, well, I'll cover it. We'll be talking about the Jackson Wall roofing, and we'll be recommending that we authorize the administration to accept a proposal from Tremco to restore portions of Jackson Wall elementary roofs, which are out of warranty. It'll provide us with a 30-year warranty. And I think we have a representative here, Mr. Brazui, if I'm not mistaken. If the board has any questions about this project, now might be a good time for us to hear a little bit more about what it entails.
Okay.
Was that your intention?
Well, he's here to answer questions, so we didn't have a presentation prepared, but if you've got any questions regarding the work to be done or the scope or the warranty or anything, I have Randy Klein here from Tremco.
This is part of the capital facilities plan that we've
Correct.
discussed.
Correct.
I don't have any questions about the roof, but I see Dr. Schlaffer here was just convincing with Bob a little bit as to whether or not your HVAC issue was ever solved.
No.
All right, so we're going to prioritize the roof over the HVAC. Is that what we're doing here?
Well, the roof program will be able to accomplish during the school year, basically before the winter time. But these,
His problem's been going on for like a year now with the HVAC, right?
We have been discussing this facility plan though for years.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is we still have, it's not working. You still have the same issues this year that you had last year.
It's old, it's continuing, it's not gonna change, I mean.
So there's no plan to fix his HVAC?
Those plans have been discussed to be, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I know, I'd like Rob to answer the question.
well, I don't think the system's in complete failure. The system needs work, and the system's due to be upgraded and addressed according to the capital plan. We are addressing issues as they arise on a day-to-day basis, but as far as the overall function of that building, that is scheduled to be addressed in the capital plan, I believe this summer is what that plan is. So, right now, it's sort of apples and oranges as far as what I can do during the school year and what I can do in the summertime. So
What did we do over the summer with it, this past summer?
we didn't do anything with it this past summer.
Thank you.
Is this roof, I know there was a long-term plan on analysis of all of our roofs with plans to accomplish maintenance sort of on a rolling basis. Is this consistent with that long-term?
Yes, this is part of that restoration of that existing roof. I've been involved with the district since 2000 with a rolling roof asset management plan. This roof was done in 2006, Jackson 1. We restored half of it, and half of it we replaced in 06. So it was due to be restored last year, and we delayed it a year. So it's part of that ongoing restoration process.
Thanks very much for being here tonight. Thanks for this.
Where people will be driving cold when the heater doesn't work.
So you expect to have this done before the winter sets in?
Yes, if the Worco Roofing will be conducting, a local roofing contractor, and it will be done this fall. It's bio-based, so it's low odor, low disruption. We're tearing out a couple sections that will be done when the students are not there, and there'll be somebody there full-time overseeing the project.
So it will not interfere with the academics and the pounding and all that?
No, there'll be no pounding. The cleaning of the roof will be done in preparation on a weekend, and any tear-outs will be done when the students are not there. And again, the actual liquid applied is a bio-base, so it's a low odor, low disruption, which enables to do when the students are there.
Okay, thank you.
One other question. So, Mr. Prezui, in the August board minutes, it was indicated that there was a generator that needed to be repaired in the high school. You had indicated the wrap around the exhaust will be tested for asbestos prior to the work being done. The generator is located in the belly of the building, and the issue should be resolved before the start of the school year. So I checked with Mr. Kane. He indicated that it hasn't been done yet because of availability of
Parts from the contractor.
Do we know if it's still?
Yes, I did
checked
speak
for
with the.
asbestos?
It was tested for asbestos. It is not containing asbestos. So we lucked out there. There were no environmental problems holding us back. What held us back a few weeks is the availability of the parts. The contractor's expecting those parts. He was actually expecting them today, but they didn't come in, but he's confident that they will be in either tomorrow or Thursday, and we're tentatively on their schedule to repair that on Friday or Monday.
Good. Okay, thank you. The other thing will be item 11, election of PSBA officers for 2018. I just have a procedural question in terms of how we would actually go about taking the vote. It looks like we have a couple of options here for each one of the positions, with the exception of position C, the treasurer. So what's the best process for us to use as a board to execute the election?
To take some time now, and maybe you have an opportunity to look at the biographic information that was attached, or has knowledge of these particular candidates. Maybe have a discussion now of which one you would want to be in the motion to be approved next week. And you also have the option of abstaining, but PSBA gives all school boards this opportunity to cast their votes.
So what you're saying is it might be wise for us to take a look at the biographical information between now and Tuesday.
And maybe discuss.
Make a decision among
And then
ourselves.
provide us that information.
Okay. We would tabulate a vote on each one of these, each one of the candidates, each one of the positions.
Right, we could do that.
Okay. I know, Russ, do you have any insights into this that you want to share?
My only suggestion would be, I certainly would, I would hope that we would support our voice for this position I was with the Muhlenberg Township School Board, and over the years of my experience with PSBA, the one thing you have to realize is that it's just amazing. It's amazing how much regional impact there is on the organization itself, and some of these other regions have much different views of labor relations, of legislative priorities than some of the regions that have really had like a death grip on the organization. I'm very disappointed to see Michael Fasanetto on the thing, because that Lehigh Valley and that area has just, they've really had a tight grip on PSBA for a while.
Any other?
West Jefferson guy. So you're saying vote for Marianne?
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh,
But what
okay.
I'm saying is I think that there's an interesting, there's some interesting play that goes on there. And I don't think that the quality of the officers over the last probably decade have been outstanding.
Anyone else on the board have any insight into the candidates they want to share?
Yeah, Otto was the treasurer of PSBA last year, as I recall. I know him personally, I knew his father also. I think he's a good person, and honest, hardworking, and I know I will be supporting him next week.
I think he ran for state treasurer too.
Yes.
Okay, I just have one, additional announcement before we convene. Actually, a couple announcements. One is that recently there's been some interest in discussion and information about transgender students and issues related to transgender students. So the board has received some articles, one from PSBA, one from the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, to help better understand some of the issues associated with how school districts handle transgender students. It's also my understanding that the BCIU is going to be scheduling a workshop for school administrators in October. So what I'd like to recommend is the policy committee begin a process of investigating this topic in greater depth, allowing our board members and our school community to have an opportunity to better understand the current legal and cultural factors that will affect the way we address the needs of transgender students. Haven't established any dates at this point for determining a meeting, but there will be a public announcement, and we'll go through the typical meeting announcement process for this. So I just wanted to make that announcement and something to kind of look forward to. I also wanted to announce that the board had an executive session preceding the meeting to deal with personnel matters, and that will be, after we convene this meeting, we'll be meeting again in executive session to again meet on personnel topics. And that's the extent of my final comments. With that, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Means adjourned.